All right, friends, it's time to give you loyal listeners a discount on protein powder. You may or may not know, but I launched my very first protein powder 2 years ago. It's a grass-fed beef isolate with only 3 ingredients: grass-fed beef, either organic cacao or organic vanilla, and organic monk fruit. Now, if you don't want any of the added flavor and sweeteners, you can also just get unflavored. And no matter what flavor you choose, you're getting over 23 grams of protein per scoop, which is going to keep you full and satisfied between meals. I love starting my day with a Fab4 smoothie and breaking my fast with that much protein. It makes a serious difference in my cravings and blood sugar balance the rest of the day, and I've seen it with my clients as well. Now, I never thought I'd own a product company, but when I got pregnant with Sebastian, I realized the majority of protein powders were chemically extracted or enzymatically extracted, and I wanted to use heat and water only. I wanted minimal ingredients because we don't need those emulsifiers, fillers, or added vitamins, minerals, and probiotics. All of those additions increase the chances that it's not going to work for your body, whether it be bloating, digestion issues. I just wanted pure, clean protein to keep you full and satisfied so you could build the most delicious Fab4 smoothie. And I have to say, I'm pretty proud of the flavor. If you take a look at our reviews on Amazon, you'll see 5-star reviews for flavor. And that is key, because if you don't love your Fab4 smoothie and you don't love drinking your protein powder, you're not going to do it. It won't become a habit, and it's consistency that outpaces everything. So if you're here and you're listening and you want to give our protein powder a try, use the code podcast5 for $5 off your order. And let me know if you love it. My favorite ways to apply this protein powder is in my Fab4 smoothie, making freezer fudge, making chocolate milk, making hot chocolate, and throwing the unflavored into all my kids' baked goods. So let me know how you use it. Let me know if you love it, and share this podcast deal with your friends.
Jessie Inchauspé is on a mission to translate cutting-edge science into easy tips to help people improve their physical and mental health. She's the founder of the widely popular Instagram account Glucose Goddess, where she teaches realistic and easy food hacks to people based on blood sugar science. Jessie is back on the show for a second time to promote her new upcoming book, The Glucose Revolution, The Life-Changing Power of Balancing Your Blood Sugar, which you know I love and support. It's available for pre-order and releases April 5th, 2022. Let's welcome Jessie back to the show. Jessie, welcome back. I'm so excited to have you back. Your new book, Glucose Revolution, The Life-Changing Power of Balancing Your Blood Sugar, is out. I have my copy. I am so excited about it. And we were talking before the podcast. The reason why I love you and what you put out on Instagram and what you've put out in your book is this really approachable, meet you and meet your audience where they are type of advice that is so realistic. It isn't things are off the table and on the table. It's really the hacks of blood sugar balance. And, you know, if I have the light structure of the Fab4, you have the hacks that they just layer on top of that make it so easy to live the life they want and to not have restriction and to get that energy back and to eat what they love. And that's what you preach. And that's why you're back. So today we are going to do a celebratory book launch tight podcast. So if anyone's listening, we are going to roll through the best tips for balancing your blood sugar that Jessie has put in her new book, Glucose Revolution, the hacks of what are your best tips so that if anyone has just 30 minutes of time to listen in, what can they do to change their life? So let's start with your absolute favorite hack for balancing your blood sugar.
Totally. Thank you, Kelly. And thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here again. My favorite hack, absolutely favorite hack, would be eating your food in the right order. So when you sit down for a meal, you can be eating the exact same thing during the meal. But if you eat the ingredients of that meal in a specific order, you can reduce the glucose spike by up to 70%, which is a huge reduction in the glucose spike. So as a result, you know, your hunger is tamed, you have fewer cravings, less fatigue, better sleep, better mental health, fewer wrinkles, less acne. I mean, you know, all the amazing side effects of balancing your blood sugar. And so to me, that is really the most powerful place to start, because you don't have to change what you eat at all. You just change how you're eating it. So the order is veggies first, proteins and fats second, starches and sugars last. And you don't have to be like super draconian about it. do it when it's easy. I always preach that as well. It's really important to incorporate the hacks in a way that feels very fun and not stressful, and to do them when it's easy to do them.
It's such a good one because it really encourages people, especially if they're like eating out, if they're at a restaurant. I think about like some of our favorite restaurants in LA, John and Vinny's, Pisana. These are like traditional Italian restaurants where there's like pizza and pasta and tiramisu at the end, and it's a vibe. Like the scene is fun. There's lots of people. It like feels like you're in, Europe, like where you are, it just feels like just the energy is there. And so what that tip tells me is just, we're adding the Brussels sprout salad. I'm adding the ensalada mixta to the beginning, and I'm nourishing in a way that is supporting my blood sugar balance. It kind of makes me think like, okay, we should be ordering the side veggies first and saying like, bring out the salads and the veggies first. If I'm going to get those, might as well have them. They're going to be done before my pizza. They're going to be done before my pasta, like have those delivered first. Yes. How are you incorporating this tip? It seems easy when you're out at a restaurant. How are you incorporating this tip at home? And what are some of your favorite like veggies to serve up first?
Absolutely. So if there are no veggies in your meal, that's also something I recommend, as you say, like adding a plate of veggies as a starter. So my favorite thing to do is, I'm a big broccoli, cauliflower fan. I don't know. I have this obsession with these vegetables. I love them. So very often I will roast a big tray of broccoli and cauliflower over the weekend with some avocado oil, some salt and pepper, maybe make a little tahini sauce and keep it in the fridge, and just keep those veggies in the fridge. And before each meal, when I'm at home, I'll just take a few out of the fridge, warm them up, have them as my vegetable starter, because I know that then, regardless of what I'm going to be eating afterwards, my blood sugar is going to be balanced, my glucose is going to be steady, I'm going to feel so much better. And what I do also, which is actually I learned from somebody in my community whose story ended up in the book, because the book has lots of stories of how people apply the tips in their lives. His name is Gustavo, and what he does is that he does the broccoli roasting trick, and then he eats it at home before going out to dinner, even, because the fiber in the veggies actually stays in your system for like 90 minutes to 2 hours. So if you're going to a restaurant where there's going to be no veggie starters, or maybe you're not going to have the opportunity to order that veggie starter, have it at home before you go out, and it still works. Super cool. I love that one.
That goes in line with like not going to a restaurant or a grocery store hungry, because you're just guaranteed to totally fall off the rails. I mean, there is just this like animalistic hunger in all of us, especially if it's unsatisfied. And I love that. That's a really nice way to be able to enjoy a meal and to not be overly analyzing the menu, or if a bread basket gets thrown on the table before the dinner arrives, like to not indulge if you really don't want to. Mm-hmm. I think most of us, when we're grabbing for the chips or grabbing for the bread, it's probably because we've gone hours without eating, and we're at the place where we're like, yeah, no, any food would be great. And that looks amazing, extra amazing, because I'm super hungry. Yes. So what's your approach for that? Because that seems to be a bit backwards from your tip or your hack. Most of the things that are being served up at a restaurant first, bread, the chips, the flatbreads, the naans, like what's the plan?
So actually, it's really interesting, because if I had a restaurant and I wanted people to order as much as possible at my restaurant, and when desserts rolled around, for them to order all the desserts, that's what I would do. I would put the bread on the table first, because what happens if you start your meal, especially if you've been fasting for a long time, if you start your meal with bread or other starches, big glucose spike, and then it crashes. And about 90 minutes afterwards, you might get this uncontrollable feeling of hunger. You might feel tired, and then if you're still at a restaurant and you're about to see if you want to order dessert, that glucose crash is going to make you want to order dessert. So I wonder if it's just like a big conspiracy.
It is probably.
Probably to some extent, of people just trying to make you order more at a restaurant. So what I do to combat this is, even if the bread looks amazing, I just keep it for later. I set it aside. I'm like, okay, I'm going to have this after my main. So it's not about cutting it out completely. Listen, I love bread. I mean, I grew up on baguettes, right? I love bread, but I will have it after I order that side dish of vegetables and after I eat my fish or my protein during the main. And actually it becomes quite practical because you can then use the bread to sauce the plate of the main dish. I mean, it all makes perfect sense. So that's what I do. I just set it aside. And what's fun is that as I've taught the hacks to, my friends and my family members, now they kind of have the exact same reaction when we're at dinner or lunch together, like, oh, bread, yeah, let's put it aside for after the mains. So it becomes this fun thing you can do with the people you're with.
I think that's the beauty of science and understanding how to support your blood sugar balance and having flexibility. And we were talking before the show that I think blood sugar, I mean, we geek out on it because we love it so much, but it is just, there's so much freedom in blood sugar balance because it isn't, is it keto or is it not? Is it plant-based? Is it not? Is it gluten-free? Is it not? Is it dairy-free? Is it not? Like, are you sober? Are you, sober curious? Are you out, like it is just your body's reaction to food. And there are so many ways to support its balance and have flexibility without these rules. So you're more likely to get your friends and your family members and your community and the people who follow along to get excited about it and to share with their friends, because that science is, when it's applicable going out and you can still enjoy your life, it's applicable at a party, it's applicable with your friends and your family around the dinner table. Like, you're more likely to infuse that motivation and that positivity around food with the people around you versus feeling like you're sitting down to a meal and all you're thinking about is, please don't order that. Please don't bring the bread. I don't want them to bring, and I'm going to try to like not eat it. Like it's beyond that. It's how can we all support one another?
It's additive. You see what I mean? The hacks that I share are all about adding things or adding specific types of food in specific orders. It's not about restricting. On the contrary, it's really about liberation. And this is something that I really believe in, is that good health, mental and physical, through food can actually come via this new way of thinking about how we eat, which is, of course, you have core principles, but you're not just cutting out entire food groups, because that's really challenging. It's complicated. It can be a little bit difficult socially. And also it's not really sustainable. So I think it's really, really, really cool to see this new era of food science that is showing us, Kelly, that we can eat everything as long as we eat it in specific ways with specific hacks and heal our physical and mental health at the same time. So it really excites me. And I hope everybody gets to learn about this and apply it, because it's truly life-changing.
Definitely it is. Well, you talk about sopping up your sauce, which primarily is probably some sort of a fat sauce, right? Whatever that protein's been cooked down in, or the veggies have been roasted in for your main, sopping up that sauce with bread, which sounds delicious. And I know, and that adding fat is going to slow down the digestion of that meal, elongate your blood sugar curve. But you also talk about using a specific ingredient, sopping up or putting a specific ingredient on certain veggies and with bread. It's sort of like what the Italians do with their balsamic. But what can we be adding, and what is science telling us is supportive of blood sugar balance when it comes to that magical liquid?
The magical liquid, the closest thing to a silver bullet that you can ever imagine. It's actually incredibly powerful. So the magical molecule is called acetic acid, and it is present in vinegar. And so acetic acid, if you have it before your meals, so what I recommend is 1 tablespoon of vinegar in a tall glass of water, or a tablespoon drizzled onto your vegetable starter, you can reduce the glucose spike of the meal by up to 30%, which is incredible for such a small hack. And the way it works is that the acetic acid in the vinegar has this incredible impact on your body. So it does 2 things. First, it goes to your muscles and it says, Kelly's muscles, please soak up the glucose coming into the bloodstream. And so as you're eating your meal, your muscles become hungrier for this glucose. They soak it up, so the glucose doesn't stay in your bloodstream for as long. So the spike is smaller. You put on less weight, less inflammation, less aging, fewer wrinkles, et cetera, et cetera. So vinegar is your biggest ally. The second thing it does is it actually slows down the starch breakdown process in your stomach. So instead of your bread, for example, being broken down very quickly and then turn into glucose into your bloodstream, and turn into glucose in your stomach and intestine and then going into your bloodstream, that process is slowed down. So with the addition of vinegar, you have these two things. You actually have slower arrival of glucose into the bloodstream. And then once it's there, it gets soaked up super quickly by your muscles. So you have a much smaller glucose spike. And if you just put these two things in place, for example, these two hacks, eating foods in the right order and vinegar, I mean, already people report to me the most incredible changes, fewer menopause symptoms, reversal of type 2 diabetes, period coming back. I mean, the studies are also remarkable. They show the impact of these hacks in everybody, especially in people who don't have diabetes. I mean, this is what we're talking about. Blood sugar regulation is for everybody. So yeah, those are really very powerful hacks to start with. I have many more in the book, but I think those are actually my two favorite ones because they're so easy.
Mm-hmm. So how often and how much vinegar are you having a day?
It depends on the day. I have to say, some days I have none. Mm-hmm. Some days I feel like having some before every meal. Mm-hmm. Some days I'll have some as a vinaigrette on a salad before my dinner, for example. In the studies, the most effective way to get these blood sugar benefits is to have some before lunch and before dinner in a tall glass of water. That being said, we should just do this if it's easy to incorporate. Some people really don't like the taste of vinegar. In that case, this hack is not for you, but don't worry, there are many more hacks. And in the science, there isn't really an upper limit in terms of how much vinegar you can be consuming. There's just this one case study that reported that a woman who drank, I think, 30 tablespoons of vinegar a day for 2 years straight, mm-hmm. had to go to the hospital because she had some potassium imbalance issues. But other than that, it's really up to you to figure out what feels good, what feels supportive.
Definitely. I love the idea of before lunch and dinner and breaking your fast with something that is really balanced. Can you talk about breaking the fast and how you feel about breakfast, or how the timing of your first meal supports or doesn't support blood sugar balance?
Absolutely. So after we've been sleeping for a while, we're literally fasted for a very long time. So break fast, breakfast. Our body is hypersensitive to anything you're going to be putting into it. Because your stomach is so empty, any food you're eating is going to go straight to your bloodstream. So it's very important that in the morning we eat something that keeps our glucose levels steady. And so it's not about, eating something that's low in calories, not at all. It's about eating in a way that doesn't create a glucose spike. And the easiest thing you can do, the easiest hack I have, is to have a savory breakfast. That means a breakfast that doesn't contain anything sweet except whole fruit. And this is an incredibly powerful way to start the day. And for many of us who've been eating, for example, cereal and fruit juice every morning for breakfast, we don't even know what it's like to live a day that didn't start with a glucose roller coaster. And let me tell you, once you go to the other side and you start your day with no glucose spike, you feel so energized. You don't have the 11 a.m. crazy hunger pangs. At 3 p.m., you don't feel like you need 5 coffees to stay awake. And that evening, you sleep better. So definitely, I highly recommend for anybody not already doing this to just start your day with a savory breakfast. You can also do smoothies. I mean, Kelly, you have such amazing smoothie recipes. These also fall in the category of savory breakfast because the only thing sweet in them is whole fruit. So highly recommend the Fab 4 smoothies. I'm a big fan personally. They're awesome. They're really awesome. And if you have been used to eating, let's say, pastries or cereal or juice for breakfast, take that sweet thing and keep it for later. Keep it for dessert after your lunch or dessert after your dinner. And that will allow you to still enjoy that sweet thing with much fewer consequences on your physical and mental health.
Oh, I can't even tell you what a change it was for me to completely remove processed foods from my morning, and what I've seen in my clients, just their energy levels, their inflammation, their water retention. You talk about sleep. I mean, spontaneous movement increases, their need and want to move their body. Just to think, you're changing your breakfast changes your energy levels so much that you crave moving your body, like that's not for any of us to have to push ourselves to go work out, to push ourselves to be productive at work, to push ourselves to go, do physical activity after work, for example. Like, I love the idea of thinking that small choices can have us feel this innate pull towards something that is good for our body. Again, it's like in a nourishing way, adding something savory to your plate allows for you to have all these other benefits. And it's awesome that you mentioned the Fab Four smoothie, because I think that's what people don't always realize when they come to my Instagram or like see the smoothies on my website, is that I'm being really strategic and methodical about how I'm creating these smoothies so that people don't feel those crashes. They aren't starving at 11 a.m. They aren't reaching for cookies and coffee at 3 p.m. And like the sleep, that's a game changer, because you even talk about, and I'd love for you to touch on, like how sleep impacts glucose and how it impacts our blood sugar balance, and what other things other than the order of how we eat our foods and what we can add, what else is impacting our blood sugar, and what advice do you have?
It's a vast topic. If you look at two people eating the same meal, they might have different heights of glucose spikes because of how much muscle mass they have, their age, their hydration level, their stress level, when they are in their menstrual cycle, for example. The list goes on and on, your genetics, your microbiome. There are so many factors that are either in or out of our control. And we haven't even scratched the surface, to be honest. Like, this is a very, very new field of study. I did a few experiments when I first started with a glucose monitor, where my friends and I would eat the exact same thing for a day. And our glucose spikes were completely different. And so it was really hard to interpret what was happening, who was having a better blood sugar balance, who was quote unquote healthier. You can't really say that kind of stuff. But what I realized is that no matter who you are, no matter what factors you can't control about your body, your environment, your stress levels, your sleep levels, the hacks will help you always. It's not like in some people the hacks work and in other people the hacks don't work. It's really, these are things that everybody can apply, and they will always be helpful to you. And maybe I can touch a little bit on sleep, because I think it's so interesting. And sleep is such a big factor, both in how we feel in the morning, but also a reaction of what we did during the day. Is kind of like this very symbiotic relationship, and glucose and sleep are symbiotic in that way. So the more glucose spikes you have during the day, especially if you go to bed having a big glucose spike, the less restful your sleep will be. And then in the morning, if you're not well rested, your body has a harder time dealing with a big influx of glucose. So what often happens is that you might get in this vicious cycle where you have not slept very well. Therefore, you get a bigger glucose spike for your regular breakfast. Therefore, that spike leads to a crash. Therefore, you have a craving. Therefore, you eat something else that is sweet. Therefore, you have more spikes and you sleep worse that night. It just turns into this wheel that you can't get off. And a very efficient way to get off that wheel is, one, using my hacks, because that'll help you keep your glucose level steady. And two, movement. So in the morning, if you haven't slept well, starting your day with 10 minutes of vigorous exercise. It can be dancing to your favorite songs. It can be cleaning your house. It can be walking your dog. That seems to be very powerful in actually resetting your body's ability to deal with spikes. Yeah. What's your experience with the whole sleep and glucose thing?
Well, I love that you just, again, I have to just give you kudos for giving totally actionable and doable things. She did not say, go to Barry's boot camp and OTF and sign up and get a 90-minute HIIT training workout in where you're throwing around 30-pound kettlebells. She just told you to dance for 10 minutes to your favorite songs. Like, these are the little things that I think are so, so powerful. You mentioned working out in the morning. I also think that moving your body after dinner, so like that, and we talked about this on the last podcast, that is so powerful, because a lot of times what ends up happening is dinner becomes the biggest meal, and we sit down on the couch to binge some Netflix, then comes out the chocolate, and we may have been balanced most of the day, but then it's like more of an emotional blanket that we're wrapping around ourselves when we're like, I deserve this. Like, 100%. I felt that way. Everyone feels that way. You're like, especially if you're writing your book, you're like, oh my God, okay, I did a lot today. Like, curl up, hang out, like have something sweet. And so what really, really brings down that glucose post dinner, and it keeps people from kind of getting on that blood sugar roller coaster, overeating dinner, and then overeating dessert is that movement. So I always say, like, if you want to have dessert, great, have it right after or right with dinner so that it's not a subsequent like post meal, like postprandial extra spike. And then go even walk 10 minutes around your neighborhood. Like, I think getting that darker light, like if it's dark outside, you're telling your body it's nighttime, you're preparing for sleep. Like it is a way to habit stack that so that you're not saying don't have your dessert, have it right after, have a piece of dark chocolate with the meal, like finish it off in your order, Jessie, but then
Yes.
go get out of your own head instead of saying like, oh, just don't eat chocolate on the couch right after you sit down after your big meal. Great. Like how we replace that habit of sitting down, even if you'll come back and watch TV or whatever, but to do it in a different room or to pick up a book. Like a lot of times these habits, like you said, are cyclical. We get in these habits of eating highly processed foods and then having these spikes and then having bad sleep. And then kind of it perpetuates itself. Right. And so sometimes it takes not just trying not to do something, but like really replacing that behavior until that it's gone. Right.
Absolutely.
And so
you know what I started doing as well to try to replace, I'm a big chocolate person and I always ate chocolate in front of the TV. I started knitting. So, because I needed to have something in my hands. That was really what was soothing to me in the evening, especially in the winter. I just want to be in front of Netflix after my dinner and just have something in my hand, something to do. So I started knitting, or I do a puzzle in front of the TV. Just as long as I'm occupying my hands, I feel like that's actually what my body needs. And it doesn't necessarily have to be food. It's just like my body wants something soothing to do, something that takes my mind off the day and prepares me to relax. So knitting and puzzles, highly recommend.
Hey, you know what? I love that so much because so many of us sit on our couch with our phone and we're scrolling. We're not even watching the TV. And they talk about the quality of your experience being our presence in that moment. And being on your phone and watching TV, you're not getting anything great out of either of them. You're not learning any. If you're like the people you follow on Instagram are like doctors and researchers and you're trying to learn something, or you're into fashion or you're into interiors, you're not really learning if you're halfway watching TV. And you're not getting anything emotional out of like what could be the most beautiful cinematic moment from television. Like it's all of these quality experiences really are like, how present are we for these experiences? And so it is so hard in today's day and age when everyone's multitasking, like to be present for something, and it takes effort and it takes boundaries and it's like whack-a-mole. You're like, turn off the TV or put the phone down or like get the chocolate out of my hand. So I love that you're, again, so doable, like a puzzle or knitting, like learning something new, but like having your hands busy in a way that isn't like, isn't really overly stimulating to the brain too before bed. Like cool, because you're like looking for shapes in the puzzles, or like you're using your hands for knitting, but in a really like a lovely traditional old school way. So totally. good stuff there.
Thanks, Kelly.
I want to circle back to menstrual cycles and how that impacts glucose before we close up today, because the majority of my audience, 97% of you lovely humans, are female in your menstruating years. So let's talk about that. How do our sex hormones impact blood sugar?
Absolutely. And how does our blood sugar impact our sex hormones?
Yeah.
So in the second part of your cycle, right, after ovulation and before your period, your glucose levels are just naturally going to be a little bit higher. And if you wear a glucose monitor, you're going to notice that. And that's because of the effect of your sex hormones on your overall body's hormonal regulation. So that's a pretty interesting thing to discover. And unfortunately, as we get closer to our period, our blood sugar regulation system gets a little bit less great. So something that you might eat in the first part of your cycle that doesn't create such a big spike, at that moment when you're in your PMS or premenstrual phase, that same food might create a bigger glucose spike in your body, and as a result, a bigger crash. And we know that even just very small crashes of 20 milligrams per deciliter activate the craving center in your brain. So oftentimes the same foods, just because it's before your period, are actually going to be creating this craving sensation. And so that's one of the reasons we get cravings before our period, because of our glucose levels being a bit more out of whack, even though we're eating the same stuff. And it is so annoying.
Yeah.
So as a result, it's extra important before, in the second phase of your cycle, to use the hacks even more and to make sure that you're not eating any naked carbs. You're always pairing your carbs with protein, fats, or fiber. You're using the vinegar, you're using the food order, you're moving your body after you eat, and many more cool hacks, because this really allows us to gain back some control in that phase that can feel, to be honest, quite distressing and annoying. But there is actually power in your plate and in the way you're eating. So it's really cool and empowering when I hear stories of women who've been applying the hacks and their cravings before their period has disappeared. Other PMS symptoms also have disappeared. And now lastly, I also want to say that in the flip side of things, if you've been experiencing many glucose spikes for many years, this might lead to infertility or polycystic ovarian syndrome symptoms. And these things are actually incredibly actionable. So if you have polycystic ovarian syndrome, the only solution is not to go on the pill. You can actually, with how you're eating and with using my hacks, reverse those symptoms, get your glucose levels in check, get your insulin levels in check. As a result, have less testosterone in your body, and your polycystic ovarian syndrome symptoms will vanish. Polycystic ovarian syndrome is a disease of too much insulin, which means a disease of too many glucose and fructose spikes in the body. So anyway, I mean, what I want to say is that any symptom you're experiencing, whether it's pre-period cravings or polycystic ovarian syndrome or poor sleep or hunger or fatigue, these are all signals, messages your body is sending to you, being like, hey girl, something's wrong. Like your glucose levels are out of whack. And we have power, and it doesn't have to mean going on an extreme diet. It can just mean applying the amazing science-based hacks that I share and getting back to a state where your body is your best friend and you take care of it and you feel great.
Oh, that was a mic drop. Get back to the place where your body is your best friend. I think a lot of us at certain points in our life are fighting our bodies, and we're fighting to not feel bloated. We're fighting to lose weight. We're fighting to keep going when we're feeling stressed or when work requires a lot of us, or fighting to get through a pandemic. Like, food can be your best friend. You can get to a place where, you know, your glucose excursions are less than 10 milligrams per deciliter, or more of a, you know, I think there's this movement towards flatlining your glucose. And that's kind of the extreme, right? That's the extreme of, hey, if low carb is good for you, then no carb is the best. Like, let's not go there. I think if someone's wearing a continuous glucose monitor, I could turn mine on and show you right now. I have excursions that go 30 milligrams per deciliter because I've decided to have like my cake and eat it too. It's just using those science-based tools that you share in your book, Glucose Revolution, that really allow you to have your body be your best friend, where you can say, like, I am going to have those chips and that guac, but I'm going to wait till they serve up my fajitas first.
Totally.
Or, you know, like, let's find ways to live in a flexible way, but have our body be our best friend.
I love it, Kelly.
Jessie, you are the serious best. Got to fly you to California so we can push the bread to the side and hang out.
I would love to have lunch with you next time I'm in California. Let's do it. Thank you.
Perfect. I love it. Thank you for being here. You guys go grab Jessie's book, Glucose Revolution, The Life-Changing Power of Balancing Your Blood Sugar, Lose Weight, Stop Cravings, Get Your Energy Back, and Still Eat What You Love. Love you, girl. Thanks for being back.
Love you too, Kelly. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for listening to Be Well by Kelly. Please subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Learn more at bewellbykelly.com and follow me on Instagram at bewellbykelly. I would love if you picked up my books, Body Love and Body Love Every Day. They're sold on Amazon and at all major booksellers.